Okay, welcome back to Gary's Economics. Today we are doing the video that I was strongly advised not to make, and we are going to tell you who you need to vote for in this week's local elections if you want to stop the collapse in living standards. Alright, so the basic context for our foreign friends or British people who are not particularly interested in local elections, which is quite a lot because local elections tend to get ignored. We have local elections coming up this week, coming on the 7th, which is the Thursday this coming week. And you need to vote in these elections because they are particularly big ones. They're really important. Really, this is the closest you are going to get to a vote for who is going to be your next Prime Minister if you're here in the UK. So local elections do tend to get ignored. They don't change the Prime Minister, although this one quite possibly might. But this one is really, really important. First of all, we've got a few big elections going up. It's going to decide the new government in Scotland and in Wales. The second big reason why this is important is because if you watched my video a few weeks ago, I spoke about how the established political parties in the UK, like in the rest of the Western world, are basically collapsing. And we have a situation now where historically, for hundreds of years, the UK has been a two-party political system. And in the next election, we will have genuinely 6 or maybe even 7 parties that have a big say on who will be the next Prime Minister. And these local elections are going to be basically a big battling ground to decide like which political parties are considered to be like the serious contenders for the next election. It's particularly important, obviously, for Labour, who are incredibly unpopular, and everybody will be looking to see how badly they do. It's going to be really important for the Greens, who are... There's a kind of battle going on at the moment in the UK to determine basically who is the legitimate person or party to vote for if you want to prevent a reform government in the next general election. That was a big story in the recent by-elections in Manchester, and I think there's going to be a big thing here about whether the Greens are the more legitimate anti-reform party in this country, in contrast to Labour. It will be important also for Reform, who are well ahead in the polls, but are seeming to lose a bit of popularity because of Donald Trump doing things which are hurting living standards and quite internationally unpopular. So it's going to be massive in deciding like who are the runners and riders for the next election. Basically, like, will the established political parties, Labour and the Conservatives, disappear or will they not? And the third main reason why this is super important is because there is a realistic possibility that Keir Starmer will resign after the local elections. So the context on that is that Keir Starmer is polling incredibly badly. He is incredibly unpopular. He's apparently the least popular British Prime Minister in the history of polling. There's a lot of controversy right now about Peter Mandelson and Jeffrey Epstein and all this stuff going on. But it is very possible that if Labour do incredibly badly in this election, he will be forced out. As a betting man, I should probably talk a little bit about how likely that is. The betting market thinks there's about a 50% chance that Starmer goes before September and about a 66% chance he goes this year. I actually think that it's quite possible they'll keep him on a bit longer, but really we don't know. But it is very possible. We can't say with certainty, but if it's not immediately or in the immediate period after these local elections that Starmer will go, I think it's very, very likely that he will go. He will be forced to resign either this year or next year, which means that we will get here in the UK a new Prime Minister. And these local elections are going to have a big influence on who the next Prime Minister will be. So if and when Keir Starmer resigns, the new Prime Minister will be decided within the Labour Party, between the MPs and the members, and you as an ordinary British person, if you're watching from the UK, will not be able to vote in that. So the closest you will have to a vote on deciding who will be the new Prime Minister, what will be the new direction for this country, will probably be in these elections this week. And the final reason why these local elections are important and that you definitely need to vote in these local elections is because we did a massive call out about it. I think it was 3 weeks ago, we did a video. We posted the link on how to register to vote. If you haven't registered yet, it's too late. So make sure you register for the next one. But we have decided to sort of step in a little bit on this and try to be a little bit more assertive and a little bit more aggressive in getting our viewership to vote and to participate. And the reason that we've done this is because really we want to build a bit of ability to influence the Labour Party. So if you've been watching this channel for a long time, you will know that we've grown very quickly in the last couple of years, and we have a very clear mission on this channel, which is we want to stop the growth in wealth inequality, we want to stop the growth in economic inequality, we want to improve living standards, and we want to do that by pressuring governments here in the UK and across the world, wherever you are, to build a fairer tax system which taxes wealth, very wealthy people more, and taxes working people less. That's why we call it tax wealth, not work. And we've been quite frustrated. I've been quite frustrated, especially in the last couple of years, because we have done a great job of making wealth taxes and the fairer tax system incredibly popular with the public, but centre-left political parties such as Labour or the Democrats or the centre-left party, wherever you are, have generally been incredibly resistant to these calls on wealth taxes. In the UK in particular, Labour have been pretty reluctant to even speak to me about policy. I did a documentary recently for Channel 4 and they refused to let me speak to anybody from the Treasury. And it's been quite frustrating because I think we've created a situation where if Labour want to save the economy, if Labour want to stop living standards, or even if Labour just want to not keep losing elections really badly, I think that they should be speaking to me, and I've been trying my best to let them know. If anyone out there is watching from Labour, we'd love to speak to you, email us on this email address. But we've been really pushing to build a relationship where we advise Labour to some degree on policy, and they've been really, really reluctant. And while Labour have been ignoring us, we've had this emergence of a new leadership of the Green Party, which has really enthusiastically adopted our ideas on inequality and on wealth taxes, and has rapidly increased its popularity and has rapidly increased its vote share. And I always hoped that if Labour didn't listen, to be honest, I always anticipated something like this would happen. My theory was always that if you create a public which is enthusiastically supportive of wealth taxes, either Labour will have to talk to you or somebody else will pick up the idea, they will start to steal Labour's vote share, and then Labour will have to talk to you. But unfortunately, we've now reached a situation where that has started to happen. Labour are now sort of being destroyed in the polls, both on their right by Reform and now on the left by the Greens, and Labour are still incredibly reluctant to talk to us. So we're trying to take a little bit more of an assertive, aggressive strategy where we say to Labour, listen, either you talk to us or we will start telling our votership to vote against you. They'll start telling our viewership to vote against you. So if you want wealth taxes and you're supporting the message of this channel, it's very important that you vote in these elections, because we are trying to use these elections to try and persuade Labour to give us something on wealth taxes. Okay, so we did our big call out 3 weeks ago. We really requested all of you to sign up to vote, and I hope all of you did. We called out also to the Labour Party saying, listen, make a pitch to us. We're gonna instruct our viewership on how they should vote, and we want you to tell us why we should tell them to vote for Labour. Convince us that Labour might at some point be willing to build towards being serious on wealth taxes. I'm not demanding wealth taxes now, but just give us some signal that you could work towards them. And in those 3 weeks, since we did that video, we have been contacted by one Labour MP, one backbench Labour MP, which is great. I won't name you, but thank you very much for calling out. But one is unfortunately not a great signal that Labour are going to be serious on wealth taxes, which means that I can now give you my official recommendation for who you should vote for this week if you want wealth taxes, if you want to stop inequality from growing, if you want to stop living standards from falling. I think this week you need to vote for the Green Party. And I've got my postal vote here, which I will be sending after this. And my post vote, I'll be out voting for the Green Party. I think this is, it's pretty obvious why I've done this. We have one political party in this country which is really strongly advocating for wealth taxes. We have a government which has just really given me no indication that they will ever be serious and even considering wealth taxes. They've been quite reluctant to talk to me about policy. So it is with a little bit of a heavy heart, because I would have loved to have a little bit more involvement. But the fact is, if you want wealth taxes in England in particular, the only way that you can indicate that to the Labour Party, who are the party in government, is to vote the Greens this week. So I would strongly advocate you to vote for Greens, and I will be voting Greens this week on Thursday. I should probably also mention, because these elections are not just in England, there are elections in Scotland and in Wales, and I know we do have people watching from Scotland and Wales. So for those who do not know or aren't from the UK, in Scotland and Wales we also have Scottish nationalists and Welsh nationalists, who are called the SNP, the Scottish Nationalist Party in Scotland, and Plaid Cymru in Wales. Both of these parties officially endorse wealth taxes, but I've asked my Scotland expert, a guy called Laurie McFarlane, who is a genuine Scottish economist, who are the most passionate endorsers of a wealth tax in Scotland, and he says it would probably only be the Greens. The SNP have been talking positively about wealth taxes, which I really support, but the party who are most enthusiastic for wealth taxes in Scotland is the Greens, and the Welsh situation is similar. Plaid Cymru have supported wealth taxes, but the big standard bearers for wealth taxes in England and Wales are the Green Party. So I think I will endorse the Greens in Scotland and Wales as well. But obviously, if you have your reasons to vote for the SNP or Plaid Cymru, then feel free to do that, because they also do support wealth taxes. Now, I think that the main reason why it's important to do this is because, as I've said, we are almost certainly going to have a leadership contest within the Labour Party for who will be the next Prime Minister of this country within the next 2 years. It might be this year, it might be very shortly after the local elections, or it could be next year, but I think it is very likely it will happen at some point. And we don't know right now who the next Prime Minister will be. It will be a member of the Labour Party, probably a Labour MP. It could be Andy Burnham, who is not a Labour MP. But it could go a number of ways. When you look at the betting market for next Prime Minister, the betting market really, really does not know. We have, the runners and riders are starting to step forward. The favourites are Angela Rayner, Andy Burnham, Ed Miliband, Wes Streeting. But there is no clear favourite, and we really do not know who it's going to be. And the way that this local election goes this week will have a really big bearing, especially if the leadership campaign is quite soon, on who wins that leadership campaign, who wins the next election, in which direction the Labour Party, which means our country, because they are our current government, goes. And it will also have a big bearing on where we sit on wealth taxes. So if we come out of this election and Labour do really, really well, then that means that Keir Starmer may well stay, which means, unfortunately, we will probably not get wealth taxes. If I'm totally honest, I think for probably 8 years, because I think Keir Starmer will not do wealth taxes. It seems pretty clear that he doesn't want to do that. I think if they keep him till the next election, they will lose and Reform will win. So unfortunately, as much as, I respect the Labour Party, they are a powerful political party, and we do need their assistance to some degree. If Labour do well here, that's no wealth taxes for 8 years. If Labour do badly, then there is a question of how will the new runners and riders for a new Prime Minister line themselves up. And if we come out of this election with Labour having done badly, Reform will do well in this election, and the Greens will do well in this election. These things it is basically certain Labour will lose a ton of seats, Conservatives will lose a ton of seats, and the Greens and Reform will take a ton of seats. If Labour do really badly and the Greens do really well and Reform don't do that well, then it really begs the question to Labour of what are you going to do about this big threat on your left, which is Zach Polansky and the Greens. And I would hope, if Labour are intelligent, that they would recognise the smartest thing to do if they want to neutralise the threat on their left of Zach Polansky and the Greens would be to steal their most popular policy, which is a wealth tax, and would be to talk to us, and would be to talk about how they can sensibly work towards building, designing and planning a wealth tax in such a way that it could work, talking to world leaders on the planning of these things, such as Gabriel Zucman and his team of economists in France. And I've got to be honest, like I was going to say I've been very disappointed with Labour so far, but the truth is I always predicted that Labour would be very bad and would be very unpopular. But Labour have given us nothing on wealth taxes so far. This is probably going to be our last chance to convince Labour that they at the very least need to have a wealth tax candidate in that leadership contest, which may possibly happen as soon as in the next few months. And I'll be totally honest, I think if we fail at convincing Labour to have at least one wealth tax candidate on the ballot in that leadership contest, then Labour will disappear in a relatively short period of time. I'm reminded of what happened in the mid-2010s, which was the previous time that Nigel Farage, who is our far-right leader, was really eating into the Conservative vote share. And Nigel Farage was briefly disappeared by the Conservatives basically stealing Nigel Farage's signature policy, which was leaving the EU, and making it their signature policy. And that basically destroyed Nigel Farage for 10 years. And Nigel Farage was not a political force for 10 years. He's only really coming back now. If Labour want to prevent themselves from getting savaged by the Greens at the next election, they need to steal the wealth tax policy. And I think that is their only chance of not getting destroyed. And there will be people watching that will be saying, oh, you know, we want Labour to be destroyed because we're unhappy with them. And I'll talk a little bit about that further later on in the video. If you want wealth taxes, in my opinion, your best chance of getting wealth taxes within the next 8 years is for the Greens to do incredibly well now, such that we can pressure Labour to give us wealth taxes after Keir Starmer is gone. You're actually in this weird, ironic situation where almost the best way for the Greens to win the next election is for the Greens to do badly now, because then Labour will not give us wealth taxes and Labour will disappear, which will do well for the Greens. But this is my strong endorsement. If the Greens do well today, if the Greens do well this week, it's our last chance really to get wealth taxes from Labour, which is our last chance to save Labour from themselves really. And I'll talk about what it means if Labour don't do wealth taxes and if Labour disappears later on in the video. But if the Greens do not well and Reform do very well, then it means that when that Labour leadership contest happens, it is much more likely to be won by somebody on the right of the party. People talk about Wes Streeting as being on the right of the party, who is less likely to give us wealth taxes. So basically, for me, I think this local election is basically the closest you are going to get to a proxy vote on wealth taxes coming into the next election. It will determine who the next Prime Minister is, and it is our chance to get wealth taxes in. And if we don't do that, then we will have a very weak Labour and probably a Reform government. So yeah, for me, it has to be the Greens at this local election. But I think there is also a risk, and if I'm totally honest, I can really see this happening. I think there is a real risk that you guys will go out and vote like you should, and I'm going to vote as well. We vote for the Greens. The Greens do really well in this local election. Labour do really badly. I think both those things will probably happen. And somehow Labour failed to recognise that this is related to their wealth tax policy. I've been speaking to some people in Labour the last sort of few weeks, just honestly to try to understand why they're not talking to me, because it's honestly quite baffling to me. And a lot of people that I've spoken to, they don't think that the Greens' surge in popularity and Labour's fall in popularity is connected to wealth taxes at all. So I think it is important that if you do vote for the Greens in this local election because you want wealth taxes and because you want lower inequality, that whenever you can be, you're vocal about it. I think it's important that Labour know the reason you're voting against them is because of their wealth tax policy. And I think it's important that the Greens know that the reason you're voting for them is their wealth tax policy. Because the Greens are surging in popularity now, and as they surge in popularity, lots and lots of people will be lobbying them to do lots and lots of things. Up till now, wealth taxes has been their flagship policy, their most prominent policy. There is a risk that if the Greens don't realise the reason you're voting for them is because of wealth taxes, that they start to become distracted, focus on other ideas. That will hurt their popularity, and it will also take the pressure off of Labour to do wealth taxes. There is also a risk, and I think this is really possible that Labour simply do not recognise that a big reason for the Greens' surge in popularity is because of wealth taxes. So I think if you can, I would like you to sort of be quite vocal about this. Don't sort of harass or hector people in Labour. But whenever you can, if this means voting, if this means writing to your MP, or if this means calling into talk shows, or just talking to your friends, talking to your families, making your own videos, be vocal whenever you can, when you talk to anybody in public, or if you can talk to Labour and say, listen, we would love to vote for you, but we cannot vote for you while you are so aggressively in opposition to the one economic and tax policy which could stop inequality from rising, which is wealth taxes. I think it's really important that rather than this becoming like a factional debate, which is like Greens versus Labour, that this is very, very focused on policy. Because if we focus on policy, then we can reach a situation, and I would like to ideally reach a situation, where when we go into the next election, we have both the Greens and Labour aggressively supporting wealth taxes, at least in principle. And I think that that is obviously our best chance of getting wealth taxes, but it's also our best chance of stopping reform. And whether or not you like reform, I think it has to be accepted. If we don't get wealth taxes and then we get a reform government, then that is 8 years of no wealth taxes, because reform, unfortunately, I don't think will ever support wealth tax as a policy. So now I'm going to get onto the point which I mentioned at the beginning of the video, which is that I was quite heavily advised not to do this video. And some people would think that doing this video is a bit of a risk. And I'll explain to you why. So, you know, I've been doing this work on trying to support wealth taxes since 2014. So, yeah, nearly 12 years now. And in that time, I've tried many, many things. You know, I worked for a think tank, and I went back to university, and, you know, now I'm obviously doing this social media thing. And, you know, I've met a lot of people who work in the field of trying to convince political parties, trying to convince the government, Conservatives, Labour, on how to do things. And when I spoke to them sort of a month ago, 6 weeks ago, I was saying I was thinking of doing this strategy where we tell everybody to sign up to vote, and we tell the government, listen, we're going to push people to vote, like, please give us a pitch. And what people said to me was, Labour won't give you a pitch, they'll ignore you, which will force you to endorse the Greens. And Labour can be, what I've been told, and I don't know if this is true, and if you're in Labour, I'd love to convince me otherwise. I've been told that there are people in Labour who don't take being crossed very lightly, they don't take being spoken against very lightly. And if you ever come out publicly and say, vote anyone other than Labour, then nobody in Labour will ever speak to you again. And I'm aware that this is potentially a risk. But the truth is, we need to do something. And I don't think they are going to talk to us unless we force them to talk to us, if I'm totally honest. So I figured it was worth the risk of trying to get something out of them, because for so long I've been trying to sort of play a nicer game and have failed to get any real relationship. But the real reason why I was worried about doing this video was not the sort of these concerns that it would put me on Labour's blacklist. The real reason is because of this, basically. And I'm going to flash up here. So I was looking the other day at predictions for the next election. And, you know, I've done a video on this about the betting markets, but there's also another way of predicting the next election, which is to look at the polls. And there's this group of people here, electoral calculus, who make a general election prediction based on the current polling. And I'm going to put a link in the description, but I'll also flash up here what they're currently predicting for the next election. And you can see here that the prediction for the next election at the moment is 266 seats for Reform, 107 for the Conservatives, 74 for the Greens in third, and everybody else under 70, Labour coming in fifth. And when you see that, some of you who have been following this channel for a long time and see how difficult I found it to talk to Labour might take a little bit of joy in that, and might say, oh, that's sort of just desserts for Labour for being so bad. And I do think Labour have been really bad. I do think Labour have been really bad on wealth taxes. But the flip side of that is, if this really happens, then what we will get is a Reform Conservative coalition government, and our chances of getting wealth taxes or any significant increase on taxes on the rich under a Reform Conservative coalition government are basically zero. So if we continue the way we are going, then we will get, in 3 years' time, a Reform Conservative coalition government. And what that means is we will not get wealth taxes for 8 years, because I think it will be almost impossible to get wealth taxes out of a Reform Conservative coalition government. And that's 8 years where inequality will increase considerably and living standards will fall a long way. And I don't want that to happen. And we need to be realistic about one of the reasons why that is happening, all right? So we, here in the UK, we have what is called a first past the post voting system. And maybe I'll do a video explaining in more detail. But just to summarise, first past the post voting system aggressively punishes split votes. And if you have a split vote on the left, then the left will do badly. If you have a split vote on the right, then the right will do badly. One of the reasons why Labour won a landslide in the last election was because we had a split vote on the right, which was split between the Conservatives and Reform. And that is one of the reasons why Labour were able to win a big majority, despite not actually getting that many votes. So we have a voting system which aggressively punishes division. And when I sit here and advocate for you guys out there voting Greens this week, and I do think that it is the strategic right choice to vote Greens this week, I have to recognise, and you have to recognise, and we have to recognise that when we advocate for that, we are, in many senses, advocating for a splitting of the vote on the left of this country. We're in a situation now where Labour are very unpopular. The Greens are surging in popularity. This website is predicting that the Greens will beat Labour in the next election, which I think, to be honest, is very possible. And as much as I would love, listen, I've been really impressed by the Greens grabbing wealth tax. I've been really impressed by Zach Polanski's work. You know, I've met Zach Polanski a number of times. From what I've seen of him, I like him. But we have to accept, if we have a splintered vote outside of Reform, you know, and the Liberal Democrats are getting 70 seats here as well, and the SNP are getting 45 seats. If the vote outside of the right is splintered, then that will probably mean a Reform government. And, you know, I want this channel to be like really welcoming to everybody. So listen, if you're out there considering voting for Reform, you know, there's space for you on this channel. The reason I do not want a Reform government is because these guys, the Reform Party, I am very confident they will never support wealth taxes. In my opinion, their economic policy is primarily about reducing taxes on the very rich. So look, the reason I'm hesitant in this video is because, as much as I'm really happy to see like this growing surge in Green support while they support wealth taxes, I'm also aware that if we have this like shattered, divided political space outside of Reform, then Reform will win the next election. And I think when that happens, I think the correct response from us is to make sure as much as we can that we avoid factionalism and that we avoid hatred amongst each other. Now listen, I've been sort of floating around politics for a long time in this country. And, you know, I know and I've seen there has been an awful lot of bad blood between the centre-left, which I guess is currently represented by Labour, and the left, which I guess is currently represented by the Greens. And I understand why that bad blood is there. And there will be some who are supportive of the Greens that will say, listen, forget Labour, we can kill them, we can take them out. The truth is, I think doing that within the next 3 years, the next election will probably be in 3 years, is going to be incredibly difficult. You know, in the last couple of years, the Greens have played a very good game strategically, and Labour have played a very bad game strategically. And if that continues, a Labour wipeout is possible. And if I start to think that that is looking very likely, I will inform you guys. But Labour are going to change leader. Labour are going to try to do a big rebrand. If the Greens do really well in this election, maybe we can get something sensible out of them on wealth taxes. But we have to be realistic here. Our chances of absolutely eliminating the Labour Party before the next election are slim. So if we want to get wealth taxes, we do need to be looking for ways for how we can build at least some level of understanding between the different groups of people in this country, which includes like centrists, like people like Rory Stewart, who I try my best not to be mean about, but centrists like people who like Labour, even ordinary people who might be considering voting for reform, and people who are wanting to vote for Liberal Democrats, Greens, SNP. I think we need to be realistic about what's happening here, right? So when I go and say, vote for the Greens, this is not like Team Green. This is not tie your flag to the Greens. We are at a pretty dangerous moment here in the UK and in the Western world. You know, we can all look at what's happening in the US under Trump. There is a global resurgent and popular far right. And in my opinion, the reason that they are so popular, there's a number of reasons, but the primary reason is because they are the only political voice, I would say, in this country and in the world that has a clear message that they communicate about why living standards are falling and how they're going to fix it. And I don't think that that message is true. I think that we will see, and we will continue to see, that when they get into power, they cut taxes on billionaires and living standards fall. I think Donald Trump is making that as clear as anybody. But until and unless there is another political voice in the room, at the table, that has a clear message about why living standards are falling and how they're going to stop it, then you will not be able to see any political group seriously challenge the far right electorally. So when I advocate for voting for the Greens in this election, I think it's really important that you understand that not as like a tribal vote for the far left, but as a way of trying to communicate to everybody else, political centrists, even people who might be voting for reform, that there is an alternative on the economy, which is the reason living standards are falling is because of growing inequality, and that can be resolved by increased taxation of the very rich, tax wealth and not work. So, you know, I know that there may be people in Labour who are very factional, and I want to make it really, really clear. My preferred outcome at the moment for the next election is a Labour win. I think that is our best shot at getting wealth taxes. But I think we can only get wealth taxes. I think we can only get the Labour win if the Labour give us something on wealth taxes. I think if Labour don't move on wealth taxes, you know, save this in your diaries because I'll be right. If Labour don't move on wealth taxes, they will get fucking smashed. Not just here in the locals, but they will get smashed in the general election. And I do not want that to happen because as happy as I am of the excellent work the Greens have done, I struggle to see Labour getting smashed in the next election, producing any other outcome other than a reform win. So look, get out there, vote Green, push wealth taxes, tell everybody you're doing it because of wealth taxes. And if you don't like the Greens, you know, if you want to vote for another party, you know, be that Labour, Lib Dems, Reform, Conservatives, join that party and campaign aggressively within that party for that party to adopt wealth taxes in its policy manifesto. We don't need them to say, look, we're going to do wealth taxes today. Just say we are going to get a team of economists to research the design, the feasibility, start working on it, speak to the global experts on it. And this is doable. You know, we had the message just this week from somebody in the Conservative Party that's like creating a group in the Conservative Party, making the Conservative case for wealth taxes. I think the way that we win this, it is policy over party. And you aggressively support the party that gives you the best chance of getting wealth taxes. So look, that's where we are. I think we're in a really weird spot at the moment where, like, if I'm totally honest, I think we've played the blinder. I think we've created this massive space for wealth taxes. And we should be having it in policy, but the problem is Labour, I think they're kind of stuck in their Westminster bubble and they're struggling to move on it. And I think we need to do everything we can to shake them into sense and make them realise their only chance of not dying here is to give us something on wealth taxes. And I know there'll be people watching that will be going mad and saying, give up on Labour, they've got no chance, come and help us with the Green Party. And I understand that. And, you know, best of luck to Zach for the work that he's doing. As soon as I look at this situation and I honestly think our best chance of getting wealth taxes by the next election, or within the next 8 years, is with the Greens. I will say that. But I do think the fact is we've got 3 years of Labour government now, and I think we do need to do our best to slap them into some semblance of sense. So that's it. Go out, vote for the Greens. I'll be doing it. But when you do vote for the Greens, don't allow that to be a factional, we hate Labour, we hate everybody else thing. If you want wealth taxes, or if you don't want to reform government, you need to be working on building unity, building understanding, and more importantly, building a central economic message. And we are pitching strongly, and I think it's becoming clearer if you look around the world, the only economic message that people can unite around on the economy, other than the far right's message, is the problem is inequality, the problem is billionaires, it will be solved by taxing the rich. All right, so thank you very much. I'll be going to vote for this afterwards. I'll be going to France this week on Sunday to meet with Gabriel Zucman, who is, I believe, the global leader on the design of wealth taxes, a prestigious academic economist, and also to promote the French translation of my book, which I don't have a copy, but will maybe flash you like a little photo of up here. I'm really looking forward to it. If you are worried about my either pissing off Labour or pissing off the Greens, which are both risks in the way that I presented this video, do support us to hire a lobbyist. I think that's the thing that we need. I think the big thing that we've really missed in the last couple of years is we've been so successful on social media, but somehow like Labour have managed to like not notice. And I think as much as I'd like to point the finger at Labour and say, what are you doing? The fact is we have not been very good at lobbying. I've been incredibly busy. Lobbying and sort of charming people is not my forte. But I do think we need a bit of professional support because I'll be totally honest with you, I'm worried because I think Labour, unfortunately, are going to die on their asses out there. And there'll be people, probably a lot of people watching this video, that will be happy to see that. And, you know, there might be an element of schadenfreude from me when I see how much they've refused to speak to me. But the truth is, I don't think Labour collapsing is good. I think if Labour collapse, it significantly increases the chance of a reform government. And if we get a reform government, then that's 8 years with no wealth taxes. So listen, stop hating each other, start supporting each other, support our channel, support the Patreon, Tax World Not Work, and remember to vote this week. Thank you very much. I'll see you next week.